Welcome to the channel. My name is Claire Hetley, and I'm your host for today. And this is my next episode of Scientology Stories, in which we delve deep into experiences in Scientology and experiences getting out of Scientology. Here's my important note that I always say: Scientology does not want you to hear these stories. So we greatly appreciate you being here, listening, watching, and sharing, and helping us to educate and also recover when it comes to the practices and language of Scientology. My very special guest for today is none other than Mr. Geoff Levin. I'm going to let Geoff in here. Hello, Geoff.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining me today. This is, I would say, the topic we'll be talking about today, as you and I both discussed before this, is something I am just incredibly passionate about, having been, to this day, very personally impacted by the practice of disconnection in Scientology. I personally think it's fair to say that disconnection is in the top 3 most destructive practices of Scientology.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. But for today, we're going to be talking about a very special project you've been working on, your documentary, Brothers Broken. And I'm very much looking forward to hearing the story of how this came to be and just the journey that brought you to this. But let's start with playing the trailer, if that works for you.
Sure.
Okay.
Just did it. Just cut it today.
Oh, really? Today?
Yeah. Well, I've
Wow.
been working on it, but I finished it today and sent it right to you.
Wow, this is amazing. So this is a premiere of this.
30-second promotions.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, so here we go.
What got Geoff nailed, they gave him something, he passed it on to me, I put it on my blog, now they know. Geoff Levin is in touch with Mike Rinder. He is now someone to be destroyed.
Amazing. I'm so honored that I got to watch the entire documentary from beginning to end. What an incredible story. And we will definitely include the link in this description, in the video description below, of where people can buy tickets. Do you want to talk about that a little bit, and then we'll get into the story of it?
Yeah, this is our New York debut, in the East Coast debut. We already had 2 great festivals on the West Coast where I learned about festivals and screenings. So the New York one, I don't have as many friends in New York, so I'm pushing as hard as I can to get the word out to people who know people in New York or people in New York that can go. So, and it's an incredible festival. I wasn't even thinking, I had entered it and then forgot about it. And then all of a sudden I get a contact from the festival person, and they're so together. This is their 25th or 26th year doing this festival.
Wow.
And they're in the top 10 independent film festivals in the world. So,
Wow.
and it shows. The people are great, but they also kick my butt. You got to keep promoting.
Yes.
We need more ticket sales. Come on. So,
Yes. And I will say, I was just so deeply, deeply moved by this story. Do you want to just give a 30-second overview of your story, and then we can launch into talking about how this documentary came to be?
I actually was contacted about Scientology in 1963. You could say converted to a few concepts that Hubbard wrote. In 1968, my band joined, and it destroyed the band. Talk about disconnection.
Right.
Started right there.
Yeah.
that was almost one of the first things we learned was disconnection.
Wow.
And then I stayed in, and my brother left in 84. I disconnected from him. Nice. And he tried to tell me and warn me, and I just didn't want to hear about it. And then, so I stayed in, and then in 2008, things started happening to me. And it ended up and resulted in acute depression for me for 3 solid years, no relief for 3 solid years, because in Scientology, you can't take any medications for it. And I couldn't do auditing anymore because it wasn't working, even though it honestly never did work.
Right.
But at that time, they tried to do the advanced auditing, and which is therapy, their form of therapy, and it didn't work.
Yeah.
And I said, I can't do this, because I was going in further and further into the depression as they were trying to do this therapy. So 3 years, and it was either die, because I was so distraught, or and I didn't even think I would ever get out of it.
Wow.
And then thanks to 2 amazing people that are my heroes, Tony Ortega and Mike Rinder, I started to come out of it because I started to read their blogs.
Wow.
And of course, in Scientology, that's forbidden.
Yeah.
But when you're in acute depression, you actually don't give a crap about what anybody thinks. So at that point, I said, I don't have anything to lose. I'm just going to check out this Tony Ortega. He's not an ex-Scientologist. So, okay. 2 months, and I woke up.
Wow.
And I mean, literally woke up one day, and I was grateful for being alive.
Amazing. And I'm so glad that you share that, because it's just really important that people not lose sight of the fact that it's never too late to wake up. It's never.
No.
Yeah.
No, and that was one of the things that I realized, it's never too late. I was in my late 60s, and it was like starting over. And I determined that being a cultaholic is like being an alcoholic or a drug addict. You get stuck at the age that you start taking the drugs.
Wow. I had not heard that before, but that is absolutely something that I've seen to be true in relation to people getting out of Scientology.
And so I determined, wow, I'm actually 23 years old.
New lease on life. Wow. What an amazing perspective.
And I actually felt that way. Physically, I was recovering from 3 years of depression. I was down to 124 pounds from 165.
Wow.
So I woke up and started eating.
I can relate. That was very similar to my experience escaping from the Sea organization. I had a lot of parallels there. Wow, that's amazing. And so let's talk about this documentary, since that's our purpose for being here today. And I will say, it just so greatly impacted me. Do you mind if I share that one line that we talked about?
Please.
Oh, yeah. So there's the line in there, blood is thicker than Scientology. And oh my goodness. I mean, and of course this is in the context of your story and your brother's story and the disconnection and then your children and all the elements of that. It's just so powerful. But tell me about this journey and what brought you here today, and let's delve into that.
I was under the radar till almost I mean, 1968. I mean, 2018.
2018. Okay.
But I actually officially woke up, and I consider Black Friday is my anniversary day because it was right around then that I woke up.
Wow. Well, congratulations on the anniversary you just passed.
I know.
Yay.
So I celebrate by spending all the money I have every year on Black Friday. Just joking. but at that point, I did go out and buy an iPad, which was fairly new at the time. And I did that because I wanted to be able to read more about the truth of Scientology.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have a computer. All I had was an iPhone, a tiny screen. And so I was so excited to be able to have a little bigger screen, be able to read this stuff. Anyway, the deprogramming started almost immediately. In other words, I saw that, okay, I really need to learn the truth, and part of that will help me to remove all of these brainwashing concepts that I have that I'm not even aware of.
Right.
And so that progressed and it's still progressing, but I have done a search and destroy. For the first 3 years, I was very intensely trying to find what was true, what wasn't true. So I didn't, and what I discovered, and I don't know if other people have mentioned this, Hubbard, and I feel this was conscious, carefully inserted into true concepts something that was not true, but sounded original coming from him, and was purely there to manipulate people.
I completely agree with that. 100%.
So then now when I was under the radar, I went back on course. And I think I'm the only person I know who was really under the radar, totally was not going to go back in. But I finished a big course because I wanted to start spying and getting more information on what's really going on. And what does the new course, because it was a new version of a big course called the PTSP course, which everyone has to take.
Yes. And of course, that's delving into the subject of suppressive persons and potential trouble sources and the control mechanisms in Scientology that mandate who you can or cannot speak to, regardless of whether they're your family or not. Would you say that's a fair summary for anyone who doesn't know what we're talking about?
Yes, and it really is the place where Hubbard makes it clear that you have to disconnect from certain people.
Right.
You have to. And it also makes it clear that and I really was carefully looking to see, was it still in this course? He identifies that there are individuals called suppressive persons, and if you don't disconnect from them, you will have mountains of trouble for the rest of your life.
Yes.
And they are the sole source of being connected to them, really are the cause of illness and mistakes. And sure enough, it was still in the course, and it was in big letters on the course. I had to memorize it.
Yeah. And I would say another element of that as well. I mean, the ones you touched on are huge, but also the other element is that Hubbard outlined very clearly that should a Scientologist not follow this mandate, that it will impact their own spiritual progress, and Scientology will not work for them.
Yeah, no, that's exactly true. It's mandatory, and a course like that is actually mandatory if you want to progress. You have to do the course. It's not an easy course. It's a long course.
Yeah.
And not particularly cheap either. I can't remember, but I had done the course before, and now I did the new course.
Yep. I did it 3 times. The
Yeah.
first time I was 13.
Oh man. Well, that really was one of the first concepts I learned when I first joined Scientology. And within the framework of the band, we then we identified who the suppressive person was in our band, which was completely wrong. He was just a quirky nutball, and somewhat of a diva, but he was very talented. And so he got targeted, and and they put big targets in Scientology. Those big targets get put on people, and then that's it. So anyway, I was progressing in my deprogramming. I was having these experiences. I was doing inside work, feeding Mike, feeding Tony, information that they couldn't get because I was inside for all intents and purposes and trusted. Although Mike talks about in that little promo, I almost got caught.
Yeah.
That was scary.
And which organization were you doing this course at?
I was doing the course at Celebrity Center.
Okay.
So, and they couldn't stand the fact that I would only come in on Sunday, 1 day a week. That's the other thing. They usually demand that you do these 5 days a week or all weekend. It's very demanding.
Yes, because you have to do a minimum of 12.5 hours per week.
Yeah.
And if you don't, you have to have special approval not to.
Well, I got special approval, and the course supervisor couldn't stand me. Course supervisor is like the teacher.
Yes.
And of course, young guy, lots of hubris. And I just took it in stride. And I was a model student because I was so enjoying finding out. Most people go into a course to find the truth.
Yep.
I went into the course to find the lies.
Right.
So
you had renewed enthusiasm in your approach and purpose.
Well, it wasn't stressful either. And this is the other thing, I could never figure out why going in to do the Scientology courses prior to that, when I was still in, extremely stressful. I would get something in the pit of my stomach every time I would drive up to Celebrity Center. It was, and I could never identify what it was.
Now, I had that same going to Celebrity Center myself. I completely know what you're talking about. It's interesting.
Yeah. So anyway, I've been pushing to get the truth, and then I started pushing to reconnect with people. I reconnected with one wonderful friend of mine who is a musician. He was under the radar, and so the two of us could relate to each other.
Nice.
And joke, and he was really helpful in giving me a lot of information that I didn't know.
Wow. And so how did you navigate that? Because that seems that you took a risk there connecting with that friend, because he could have turned on you and turned you in.
No, I trusted him. He was
okay.
And we were having lunch because he was one of the only people who stuck with me when I was in the depression.
I see.
He just wouldn't give up. And I knew this wasn't, plus he had been my music teacher for many years, very talented musician.
Awesome.
Anyway, yeah, we were both kind of like, it was like our little secret, and it made it fun.
Yeah.
To do that. So I kept progressing, and the more by the way, for 3 years when I was in the depression, I sold my company, my composing company that I'd been successful with for 25 years or something longer than that, and stopped doing music completely for 3 years.
Wow. So
when I came alive, I was doing music every day. It was like the dam burst.
Wow.
So I was starting to build my my career again, and publishers that I worked with were big publishers like Universal Music Group. I was able to do work for them again.
Wow.
And so all this was slowly coming back, and I going, what can I do? And then I finally realized I need to tell the story, because this is a different approach to really exposing Scientology than other approaches. And I really loved the aftermath, I thought, but that was a very specific approach. The production company knew what the formula was for that show.
Right.
And I just wanted to tell my story, and I knew that people would be into having the perspective of a music artist, someone who was artistic, and how did it affect my art? And it did have a big impact on it. And I realized much later, like this year, that the only therapy that I was getting that helped me alleviate the stress that I was having pretty much 24/7 while in Scientology was when I was at work.
Wow.
When I was doing music, which I love, and I'm still passionate about it.
Yeah.
When I was doing music, I was connected, you could say, connected to a positive energy.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
but as the gaslighting, which I had, got worse and worse, and more Scientologist connections were trying to take advantage of me financially and business-wise.
Mm.
And then when I would go to complain about it, their mediation system would side with the guy who had the better politics,
Right.
not the truth.
Yeah. And by politics, I'm presuming you mean better standing within Scientology.
Yeah, or they had a better connection. There was one guy who I won't mention who bilked me out of 6 figures.
Wow.
And he was my quotes consultant. He had some business acumen, he was a good business guy. And he saw my weaknesses and took full advantage of them.
Wow.
And then I went to a mediation. He happened to know one of the higher up Office of Special Affairs people.
Mm.
So that whole mediation was slanted for him to get more money out of me.
Wow.
Which he did.
Ugh.
So that was one of the things that actually increased the depression, and I couldn't understand it, and increased the gaslighting.
Yeah. Understandably. I mean, that's 100% injustice.
So anyway, we get to about 2017, and I wanted to repair the memories for my band. We had a hit record and then crashed. 1968, big hit record, toured with The Who. And then it turned into a horrible memory for everyone, because we kicked one of the band members out, and that just destroyed the band.
Yeah.
And that was disconnection.
Right.
Clear cut. And so I brought the band together, and then I started to get my finger into, you could say, film producing, where I had to hire cinematographers. I had to orchestrate getting people together. We did music video shoots and stuff like that. And then that progressed. The next step was, I should tell the whole story. And then a director friend, or a director, not a friend, but it's somebody I worked with, I'd done 3 or 4 films with him. He knew my story, and he suggested, why don't we do a documentary?
Nice.
Now, I already had that in my head.
I'm sure.
And I didn't tell him. I just told him what was happening.
Yeah.
How I was changing it, and I was still working for him on his movies. Then he made the suggestion, and that's how it started. And then my brother was on board. I had talked to him about it too, but he's not a filmmaker.
Yeah.
He's not in the industry. But he was like, yes, that would be good. And he knew that I was going to take the lion's share of work because he lives in Colorado too.
Nice.
And so together we both were on board with doing the film, and then we started doing it.
Amazing. And how long, so how much time has elapsed? Like, how long has it taken to get to where you are today?
We started thinking about it late 2018. We started shooting 2019.
Wow.
And that is kind of short for a documentary.
Yeah.
I've seen other documentaries that I really liked that were really high profile. And I talked to the producer, and she said, yeah, it took us 8 years to get to this state, right?
Wow.
So going, okay, I got it. But in between, I gave full rein to the original director and let him cut it. Didn't look over his shoulder. And then we did a screening at my place, just among crew. And there was silence after everyone watched his cut. Just silence.
Okay.
2 hours and 4 minutes, which is long.
Yeah.
And then the producer, Leslie, good producer, by the way, and she's still with me, Leslie Bates, she started to make a comment, and the director exploded. And he happens to be not a particularly supportive of women.
Oh, I see.
And he exploded. Everyone was taken back. And at that point, I sent the cut that director did to my brother. And we just decided, okay, if he doesn't want to take our suggestions, because we were the producers,
Mm-hmm.
then I guess we're going to have to do something else. And
Okay.
so he quit.
I see.
So we played good cop, bad cop. My brother was a bad cop. I was a good cop. And so guess who got to be the director?
You.
Yes.
Okay. There you
And
go.
I had directed or co-directed one short film. That's it.
Okay.
Of course,
Wow.
I've scored and been a part of making films since 84,
Yes.
1980. So I knew the process, but I had never done it. It's different when you're actually the one doing it.
Absolutely. Wow. So this has really been quite the journey.
Oh, well, I've always loved films.
Yes.
From almost a tiny kid, I was so swept up in the fantasy of films, and just, it was like the world that I wanted to live in, because my world was kind of drab, you could say. But anyway, now, 4 years later,
Mm-hmm.
and I've learned a lot.
Amazing.
Made a few mistakes, but I've already got my next film lined up that I want to do. It's a scripted film that's very positive, and I won't get into that, but I'm super excited. I'm still, though, on marketing and promoting this film,
Yes.
and it's so cathartic to get your story out when there was so much trauma involved in it,
Yeah.
and being able to release some of that trauma and then see that other people can relate to it.
Yes.
Because
Completely.
I think it's a universal story about family and how important family is. And of course, Scientology, they talk a good talk. Oh, we're all for family. And they have their little booklet, Way to Happiness, that Hubbard cleverly put together to give a front group,
Yeah.
showing how wonderful and magnanimous Scientology is. Big
Right.
word. And Hubbard, in his actual scriptures or his lectures, he completely demeans kids, families, relationships with kids, the importance of family. He completely negates what they put out as a front.
Yeah, you're
And
absolutely
so-
right. Yeah, I sum it up as, and this is from my perspective as someone born into Scientology, and I'm sure you know my mother joined the Sea organization when I was 4 years old.
Right.
Unconditional love does not exist in Scientology. And
No.
and Hubbard systematically works to break down and remove the foundation of family bonds.
Oh, it's clear. I mean, when I got into Scientology, I turned it. I had the reason I got into Scientology is because I didn't have any of that unconditional love from my parents. So, in fact, I had pretty much nothing.
Wow.
And I had no clue that that had any impact on me because they weren't abusive. They just were cold
Yeah.
and distant to me.
Yeah.
And they didn't know how to deal with, I was the first kid. And they didn't know how to deal with me. And I was a really weird kid. I mean, I was advanced in certain ways and conscious when I was, 3.5, 4 years old, but I had nobody to talk to about my feelings, about the things that I was aware of and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So anyway, when I went to the mission in 1968, I think it was January, I was like, the people love bombed me.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa, this feels so good. Like people were like relating to me. They were listening. And so I jumped in with both feet almost instantly. This was my family.
Yeah.
And I think that's the case with some people. I just happened to be one of those people. And giving that up was the toughest thing. And that's why I was in for 46 years.
Yeah.
I mean, hardcore in.
Yeah.
And I didn't even realize this until really in the last year or two.
Wow. Yeah. What an amazing journey you've been on, Geoff.
So, yeah, well, I think it's just beginning, and I have my new purpose, because something I can suggest to people who are leaving any group like this, high control group, or specifically Scientology.
Yeah.
They give you such a high purpose.
Yeah.
That we're going to not only save the world, we're going to save the universe.
Right.
And I went, okay, that's gone. This group is not going to do that.
Yeah.
I know that with as a fact.
Yeah. And by the way, side comment, I was asked recently by someone who was never in, which all those people have my greatest respect and admiration for being here at all. They asked, what did you think you were saving the world from?
Right. Well, Hubbard goes into that
right
in detail, and some of it, again, there's always a germ of truth in what he says, because that's how you get sucked in.
Right.
So it didn't take me long. It took me, I don't know, a month or two of that question. And I went, okay, what group do I like? What group does good work? And I realized I'm in that group. It's music creators.
Nice.
So I'm going to mentor music creators. I'm going to support people who create music. And that's going to be my new goal.
Amazing.
And that's panned out. I've helped other music artists that have had either they were taken advantage, or they needed more information, or they needed support in some way, or just a kind word, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I've been doing, in as well as creating a brand new album of positive messages songs with positive messages that I think people will relate to, because it's about nature. It's about um, the good side of life. And when if you live in nature, as you know, you feel it.
Oh, completely. I get my greatest peace from hiking up a mountain here every day. It's beautiful, and I absolutely, so I can definitely relate.
So the film is a chapter, a big, huge chapter for me, and I really want it to get out on a platform where people can, because I think it ultimately it does churn up some emotions.
Oh,
That's
for
sure.
sure. Absolutely.
But it has a positive message, and I think people walk away with a positive feeling,
Yeah.
not a negative feeling. And it's partly a rock video in a way. I mean, rock film in a way, because my band's in it, our songs are in it, and I just had a great group helping me make the film. Tim Jensen's brilliant cinematographer and editor, and he's a composer on the film too.
Oh, wow.
Even though I contributed music, he was the guy. He's an incredible composer. And then producer Leslie Bates as well, and our writer Nathan Isley. So I love that aspect of it, the storytelling aspect.
Yes. No,
And
that definitely, like I said, it had huge impact on me, and that's why I was so excited to just sit down and talk with you about this today. And so you have the film festival in New York on December 3rd.
and then another film festival on the other side, on the West Coast in San Francisco, where I was born,
Oh, wow.
ironically,
Yes.
and that's December 11th. So,
Wow.
man, I'm running around.
Yeah.
And that's called Another Hole in the Head Film Festival. And I was surprised they picked me, because they have these horror movies and really strange films. I mean, it's a good festival, and it's considered a really high quality festival. So two more festivals, and then my goal is to get it on a platform where everyone can see it.
Amazing. Absolutely. And so let me ask you, so along this journey of producing this documentary, have you experienced any fair game or interference from Scientology on getting your message out?
It's fascinating that certainly I got declared, even though it's not official. Declare meaning I was labeled an enemy of Scientology.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had hundreds of business connections, friends, not to mention my kids,
Mm-hmm.
and they all disconnected. And then they have a Facebook police person who I got wind of it because somebody sent me something that she had posted to Scientologists, and they were warned to unfriend me.
Wow.
So I mean, it doesn't end. But as far as anything else, like any fair gaming, the only thing I think was a few people trying to impersonate me on Facebook.
I see.
I feel I've been fortunate, or they just are too busy, and I'm small fish compared to the real issues that they have. I mean, like you and Mark, Mike, Tony, and a list of others who they really have caused a huge amount of problems for them.
Yeah. Well, and I think just the pure volume of voices in this day and age, I don't think that any voice is particularly more or less important, but the unity of our shared stories and experiences, I think, is what really comes through. That's my perspective. Like your story is just as important as mine in very different ways, but nonetheless just as important.
Well, I think that we each can touch a different segment, different
Yes.
people.
Yeah.
So each approach, and we're talking about the potential of millions of people
Right.
that you can touch. And it might resonate with somebody who has a similar experience with a different cult,
Yes.
or with a different high control group. And I think our messages are important. And that's why I think we align with other people from other who are whistleblowers for other groups like this.
Yeah.
It's a very common bond. And we're all in essence, each unique story can touch a unique group of people who need to be exposed to it.
Yes. And not only that, if we can save one other person the pain of disconnection, then that's work very well done.
Oh, listen, yeah, one life that's changed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's powerful.
It truly is deeply moving, truly powerful. And yeah, and like I said, I really encourage everybody to watch Brothers Broken. It is a very, very powerful story of disconnection, reconnection, hope, and recovery. And one other question I have for you: what were some of the things that helped you to wake up? I know you mentioned Mike Rinder's blog and Tony Ortega. Were there books or things that helped you to discover those pitfalls that you didn't even know had been programmed into you?
At the time, it was not reading, but then I got exposed to Karen de la Carrière
Okay.
and Chris Sheldon
Yep.
and John Atek, and I would read that stuff, which was about what I could ingest at that time,
Yep.
because I was still coming out of this physical kind of malaise that I had done to myself for 3 years.
Yeah.
And so mostly those were the first contacts I had. And then Nancy Maney wrote a book.
Yes.
Nancy and I, her husband, Chris Maney, who was my partner for many years, she had a really tough time. And at the time that she was having a tough time, I was not sympathetic. I was still in.
I see.
She wasn't. So that was great to reconnect with her and appreciate what she was going through the whole time.
Yeah.
So that, and then it was very weird. Charlie Rush, who was part of the Gold Band.
Yep. I knew Charlie Rush for many years.
Well, Charlie, what a sweetheart.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to take credit, but it's not what you call bragging.
Okay.
I'm one of the people who got him into Scientology.
I see.
Because he was from our area and he was a big fan of the People Band.
Okay.
Band. Anyway, it was so strange because I was under the radar, but in going to the organization where that big blue building is.
Yes, the complex, in Los Angeles.
And Charlie was relegated to being a dishwasher.
Right.
It was so sad. And then he eventually died of cancer. But that to see people that I was close with, and then worse, to see people that I was responsible for helping them expose them to Scientology, is just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And I have other friends like that who never left. And it's tough for me.
Yeah.
And I think that's another reason I'm motivated to do this film.
Yeah, that completely makes sense. And I share that with you. We have loved ones still in Scientology, and what Scientology cannot take away from us is hope and the perseverance to keep shining a bright light on destructive practices that hurt people and destroy families.
And I think the thing that gives me hope is the fact that I go, if I can get out of this group and disentangle myself, anyone can,
Yeah.
because I was as hardcore as they get.
Yeah.
I was really hardcore. I mean, the saving grace for me was that I was doing a business where there are very few. I did only a small business with other Scientologists. It was mostly people that were, in the industry, media people.
Yeah.
So I had to be, and I didn't proselytize or try to get people in through my business.
Yeah.
That would have been a big mistake.
Yes.
So I didn't talk about it. So I had to have a mindset of connecting with these people. So there was a tiny germ there of a real person,
Mm-hmm.
but only a germ of a real person. I mean,
But a germ nonetheless.
fortunately, that germ finally got a little bit of water and started to grow. And then eventually it took 2 months of exposure to Tony Ortega. And that's when 2 months of like intermittently reading his articles in the Village Voice.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's when one day I woke up and the depression was gone. I mean,
Wow.
it wasn't like, slowly, it was gone. It never came back.
Amazing.
So,
Absolutely amazing.
and I think that having to identify this source of irritation that's so large, for some people who have depression, I really believe that is the issue.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it was I needed to break down or to be in that position. And really, I lost control.
Wow.
And that was, I think it was another part of me saying, they're not going to leave you alone unless you're acting in such a way that they will leave you alone.
Yeah.
And they do not know how to deal with mental illness.
No, that's absolutely right.
They do not know how to do it.
They have demonstrated that time and time again. They have absolutely no idea.
Exactly. So all of we talk about it a little bit in the movie. That I could expand on it endlessly, but it is my advice. No matter how hopeless it feels, it isn't. And then you have the Aftermath Foundation, and you have all of us out here who, if someone leaves, we're like, awesome.
Yes.
We're here. We'll listen. And we can tell you our stories, and maybe those will help.
Yep, absolutely. And we understand and hear what you're going through. And yes, and having support and community is amazing. And there are just so many wonderful people in this world out here.
Exactly. One more thing that I don't really get to talk about in the film that I recommend. I just went on a quest to deprogram myself.
Yes.
I think that, and then now, after doing that for like almost 10 years, I realized, okay, now I need to go back and deal with issues that didn't get handled in Scientology and get some help and therapy on what that's all about.
Yes.
Because those things were never addressed.
Yes, completely. That's really, really good advice. It's funny to me that there's the parallels that I see for me is, so when I got out, I was terrified of reading anything negative still. And,
Sure.
Because I was leveraged by the fact my family were still in Scientology and I was holding on to a hope. But when I was declared a suppressive person, I realized, well, wait a minute, I can read a book and decide if I agree or don't agree. So I I got a copy of Barefaced Messiah by Russell Miller, and the other one was Messiah or Madman by Bent Carden.
Yeah.
Yes, and I read through those, and I had a similar experience too, where I realized I had trauma, and had to reach a breaking point to be able to go, okay, again, I can decide if therapy helps me, and if I think there's something there to be benefited from or not. It's not the stigma of in Scientology related to psychology, psychiatry, and even many other fields. It just really builds up walls instead of educating and enlightening people and letting them choose their own course.
Well, exactly. I mean, it's a shutdown. I have a little kind of what I call a triangle that has some truthful validity to it, because triangles, threes are a strong number. And I call it that in order to be successful as a creator, and I'm thinking in my case as a music creator or a film creator, the first leg of the triangle is curiosity. The second leg of the triangle is passion. And the third leg is commitment.
Yes.
Well, forget curiosity if you're in Scientology.
Absolutely.
And I think that explains why I feel there were some really talented music artists in Scientology. There are very few now. Very few. And I think, like very few.
Yeah.
I've seen more people who stopped doing music in Scientology than started doing music.
Yep, that makes sense.
So it's pretty sad, and that pisses me off to see creative people lose their curiosity, lose their passion.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't make money right away. And Scientology is motivated by either money or having somebody be such a large celebrity that they can do marketing for them or promotion.
Yep, you're right. It's all about money and control.
That's all that counts with them. And if you have either one of those or both, then you're love bombed and treated like a princess or a prince.
Yep.
If you don't, then you're kind of, you get attention, but it's only in relationship to how much you're going to give them.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
There's no attitude of we're actually here to help you anymore. So.
Yep. Absolutely. And you're right. It's what Scientology can benefit from you and what you can do for them. And that's sad. And you're right. It absolutely doesn't lend itself to supporting and growing creative minds.
No, not at all. And they're usually oddball, and that doesn't fit in.
Yeah.
When I was in the Sea Org and working with Hubbard, I was the only one with long hair.
Yeah.
This was 1974, and
wow.
I finally cut my hair. But I had in 6 months on the ship, I got a real education about what that organization is really about.
Yeah. And so on that note, what were your impressions of Hubbard, knowing him and working with him?
At the time, I walked away from it with the idea that, okay, he has a lot of bias. And before that, I wasn't sure. He has a lot of bias based on his age when he was brought up. And I was like, well, those parts of him, I don't agree with. He's just not competent in that area. As a researcher, though, I was really impressed with him.
Okay.
And the idea that he had created such a volume of work. And I didn't really put together that what he'd really done, he was a master plagiarizer.
Right.
He was brilliant at it.
Yeah.
I hate that it say that, but being brilliant, there are other people who were brilliant too, like in their own field, like Hitler and Stalin
Yep.
and Mao Zedong. They had a charisma, they had a brilliance to provide something
Right.
that was needed.
Yep.
And Hubbard, so I walked away from it with two feelings. He's not a god, nor is he really full. I still felt he had put things together in a way that was truthful, because I would have left if I didn't see that, if I thought he was lying.
Right.
So I didn't see that part of it. But I really saw that he was just a man and had human frailty. And in that respect, I could just appreciate, okay, he was really good in this one area of research.
Mm-hmm.
And so I stuck with him
Yeah.
because
Understood.
and he was kind to me.
Okay.
I think he respected my skill level. I didn't realize that that's probably all he respected, either that the person had a lot of money or a lot of skill.
Yeah, that's fair. And as we all know, hindsight is 2020, right?
Yeah. So it was a good experience, and I spent three months on the RPF,
Oh, wow.
which
Which is
is
the Rehabilitation Project Force. Deprogramming to make you better conform to the requirements of Scientology.
yeah, it would be similar to the deprogramming in China that they still do,
Right.
I think. And for me, I was a rebel no matter what. And that's why I eventually was allowed to leave the ship,
I see.
because, and Hubbard did something that I don't know if anybody talked about. People were jumping ship at that time. This was 1974.
Huh.
People were, even without their passports, because they kept your passport, people just were so couldn't take it, they would jump ship. They would, which means they'd run off the ship wherever we were and get lost
Wow.
in the city that we're in.
Yeah,
Of
no,
course.
I haven't heard that. I mean, it makes sense. And of course there's the more recent story of Don Jason's escape from the Free Winds, which was very dramatic, where he ziplined off the ship.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. But I haven't heard this one from the 70s of people just running away. And how bad does it have to be that you just leave your passport behind in some foreign place, just run?
It was pretty bad.
Yeah.
Our sleeping quarters, we had no sleeping quarters on that ship.
Ugh.
The women were berthed in some small cabins, probably 8 to 1 tiny cabin.
Wow.
And the people, this is when you're on the RPF, and the guys, we slept in the hold, and they had mattresses, and we just pulled out the mattresses and slept on a mattress. And if the weather was good enough, we'd pull a mattress up on the deck and sleep on the deck.
Hmm.
That was how we lived.
Yeah.
And so Hubbard had the bright idea that something was amiss, that there were under the radar people, although that term didn't exist then.
Right.
I was one of those under the radar people.
Oh, good for you. A blossoming non-believer.
Not a non-believer, just I knew that I was not going to be rehabilitated. I felt it was out exchange for me to do courses when I was not going to stay.
I see.
I wasn't the only one. So Hubbard had his personal PR person on the ship, Laurel Watson, who you probably...
I've heard of her. I don't think I knew her.
She was very instrumental as an executive for many years. She went around to every single crew member, every single one, and just asked one question: do you want to be here?
Mm-hmm.
And out of 268 or whatever is a big crew for the small ship, I think there were 8 of us that said no.
Nice.
And that was his solution, because he felt like there was some kind of undercurrent. He was right.
Yeah.
And so we were woken. So I answered that. It was in the evening, later that evening, like 2 a.m. Somebody poked me and said, "Get up, you're leaving."
Wow.
That morning, after all the crew had been asked that question, the 8 of us stood on deck with our small amount of belongings. People who didn't have the money were given the money to fly home. I had my own money, so I was like, "No, I don't want to owe any more money to you."
Yeah.
And me and this other guy who had been in cahoots together working on the RPF, and both of us knew we didn't want to be there.
Yeah.
He was there, and we all left.
Wow.
And I don't think I read anybody else talking about that story, but I think it was Hubbard, perceiving an issue, and I'm assuming that pretty much scared the rest of the crew into going, "Okay, we better shape up."
Right. Yeah. Situations like that. I've seen that done in later years. To me, it was almost like a trick scenario because I admire your courage, by the way, for saying, no, you didn't want to be there. It makes me wonder what percentage of those people, of that 200 and some people, would have loved to say no as well, but didn't have the courage to do so for whatever reasons, including spouses, familial,
Right.
or
Yeah.
other elements.
So yeah, so I was relieved.
Yeah.
And then I knew I went back to LA, and I immediately, here's the caveat, or whatever you want to call it. I went back to LA, and I went right to the organization on Hollywood Boulevard that deals with people who have left the Sea Org.
Yep.
And you only have one place you can go. I went there right away and said, "Tell me how much I owe," because I didn't want to leave Scientology.
Yeah.
And I had a bill of approximately $11,000.
Wow. Which was a lot of money then.
A lot. Well, I think I figured it out. It was something like, now it would be 60 or 70,000.
Wow.
And basically that's for all of the therapy and courses I did. And of course, they discount the fact that you worked your ass off for them.
Completely. Yes. And that was for how much, what length of time total that you were in the Sea organization?
I was in and out because I was one of the founding members of Celebrity Center. But we joined in, I think, late '69, and I officially left the Sea Org in July of '74.
Wow. So yeah, 5 years roughly working you're giving your all to this organization, and you then owed them the equivalent in today's values of $60,000 to $70,000.
Right. And I was kind of went from Sea Org to honorary Sea Org because I was a celebrity.
Okay.
But still, I was doing events for the church constantly, and helping Yvonne Jench, who founded Celebrity Center.
Yeah.
And Janice and Terry and Peter, I think, are the kids of Yvonne.
Yes.
And so yeah, I did all those events for them for free.
I see.
I never charged as a musician. But it was a relief to be out of that group. And then we won't talk about it today, but the bias towards me,
yeah,
as an I was never fully accepted back into the group ultimately, regardless of what I did. And I did things like was a creator or producer of the Dianetics music for their commercial.
Right. With Jeff Hawkins.
With Jeff, great guy.
Absolutely great guy.
And me and my partner at the time, Chris Maney, we didn't expect it to explode the way it did, but that music became the signature for Dianetics.
It absolutely did. To this day, people remember
Oh,
those
yeah.
ads. Yeah.
And so the end result was when some executive, and I won't name names, Fred Harris, found out that Chris was working with me because Chris had been in the Sea Org as a much higher executive. He was an executive in the Sea Org.
Yeah.
We were, after this huge success of what we did, we were basically kicked off the project, and we're told you'll never do anything for any music for anything Scientology related again.
Wow.
That was the reward for what
Yeah.
we did. And that was because we were both ex-members of the elite group.
Yeah.
And so I fought that up through leaving Scientology, and it was part of what beat me down
Yeah.
as one of the gaslighting things, that you could have been, even after you come back, and I know other people who had to pay off debts after leaving the Sea organization, but they were in good standing now and just regular members. They were treated, there was this huge prejudice against them.
Yeah. My mother was one of those people.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because she had left the Sea organization. And so she would do all the proofreading for Office of Special Affairs Freedom magazines for free.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah.
No, I know. So,
But so I very much know and have personally witnessed that stigma that you're talking about. And it's absolutely part of that culture.
well, we could get into just how many different prejudices Scientologists have.
Yeah. Perhaps we'll save that for another day. I'd love to have that conversation with you.
But I don't think a lot of people have talked about
It's true.
the transition of being in the elite group, getting out and being still dedicated, and how you're treated as a second-class citizen. And
Yeah.
someone who might have only been in for 6 months will get all kinds of treatment and privilege that you won't get.
That's right. You're absolutely right. It's a great point. Awesome. Well, we've hit our hour for today. So,
Okay.
thank you so much, Geoff, for all your time and this beautiful documentary that you've created. Again, Brothers Broken.
Can
And
I
yes,
just
go
wanna
ahead.
put in a plug?
Yes.
December 3rd, 11:15 at Union Square, which is a cool place, the Regal Theater, and that's Sunday, December 3rd. And Tony Ortega and Mike Rinder will be there, which I'm so
Wow.
excited about.
That's amazing.
Mike agreed to fly up from Florida to be a part of it, and they're both in the movie, of course,
Yes, of course.
and have contributed, and were so supportive of me doing the movie. And so anybody you know, anybody who lives in the area, please come down, and we'll be around after the film. We're going to do a Q&A, and then after that we'll be around too. So
Amazing. Yes, I will include the date, the link, all of that in the description to this video. And I absolutely wish you the best of success. It is a powerful and amazing story. And just thank you for being here today. Thank you for your strength and courage in working through all of that. You've had, as I said, an amazing journey. And I'm just so grateful that you're here.
me too. Well, I'm grateful I'm still here too, but I'm so grateful to be connected
Yes.
to so many great people. And thank you for having me on your podcast.
Absolutely my pleasure. We should definitely schedule another talk for another day.
Yeah, well, I've got many more stories of seeing stuff behind the scenes.
Amazing. Let's get it on the books and get it scheduled.
Yes.
But yes, absolutely. And thank you so much for your time. Please keep me posted on the amazing success, and I will talk to you soon.
Yes. Bye.
Bye.